You won't believe what happened when one woman in my neighborhood, who acted like she was a queen of the HOA, decided to mock me for the cabin I owned. She laughed at it. She pointed fingers and she spread gossip. But what she didn't know was that this old cabin she hated so much carried a secret that would shake the entire neighborhood. At first, I thought maybe she was joking. Maybe her laugh wasn't meant to hurt me. Maybe it was just the way she spoke. But I quickly realized she wasn't joking at all. She was serious. She hated my cabin. She hated the way it stood different from all the other houses in the neighborhood. To her, every home had to look modern, polished, and exactly the same. Mine was wooden, rustic, and filled with character. And because it didn't match her perfect little picture, she decided to make me the villain. She made fun of my cabin every chance she got. At barbecues, she would say things like, "Oh, are we eating in the shed tonight?" and laugh loud enough for everyone to hear. At meetings, she would say, "I don't know how we're supposed to keep our property values high with that old thing sitting there." And every time, people laughed nervously, as if they were afraid to disagree with her. I stood there, holding my ground, but inside I felt smaller and smaller. What she didn't understand was how much that cabin meant to me. It wasn't just a house. It was my heart. My grandfather had built it back in the 1940s, long before the HOA even existed. He built it with his own hands, cutting the wood, hammering the nails, shaping the beams. My grandmother sewed the curtains that still hang in the windows today. My father grew up running through those same hallways, and I grew up listening to stories told around the old stone fireplace. That cabin wasn't just a structure. It was a piece of my family's soul. Every nail carried sweat. Every scratch on the floor carried a memory. Every creak of the wood reminded me of someone I loved. And to watch someone laugh at it, to watch someone call it ugly, felt like a slap in the face to all the people who came before me. But people like her never stop. They always push harder. Soon, she wasn't just making jokes. She started turning people against me. She whispered lies, saying the cabin was unsafe, that it was dragging down the neighborhood. She even went so far as to say it should be torn down. She wanted rules written that targeted me specifically, rules that would force me to either tear down the cabin or leave. I could feel the judgment everywhere I went. When I drove up the street, people turned their heads. When I walked to the mailbox, they gave me polite but distant smiles. It was as if I wasn't part of the community anymore. She wanted me to feel unwanted. And for a while, it worked. I remember one night, sitting alone on the porch of that cabin. The air was cold and the stars were out. I could hear the crickets in the distance and the rustle of leaves in the wind. I held a cup of coffee in my hand and thought, maybe she's right. Maybe I don't belong here. Maybe I should sell. The thought broke me. The cabin wasn't just wood and stone. It was the last piece of my family I still had. Selling it would mean letting go of everything. But just when I was about to give up, I remembered something. My grandfather used to say, "Never let anyone tell you the worth of what you hold dear. Only you know the value of your treasure." Those words hit me like a spark in the dark. I realized something powerful that night. She didn't know the truth. She didn't know what this cabin really was. She only saw wood and nails. She didn't see history. She didn't see the land it stood on. She didn't see the heritage it carried. She had no idea that this ugly cabin was sitting on land worth more than every house in that neighborhood combined. The truth? That cabin wasn't just worth something. It was worth everything. The land alone, untouched, rich with history, had been valued at over $10 million. $10 million, not because of the fancy houses around it, not because of anything the HOA had done, but because of the story buried deep in that soil. And here's the irony. While she was mocking me, she was blind to the fact that my cabin was a crown jewel of the entire community. But I stayed quiet. I didn't tell her. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet, because I wanted her to keep going. I wanted her to dig her own grave. Every insult, every rumor, every attempt to push me out only made me stronger. The first big clash happened at a summer HOA meeting. The boardroom smelled like fresh coffee and paper. I walked in and every eye turned toward me. I could feel the tension. She sat at the head of the table, like she was a queen, tapping her pen on the desk. The meeting started, and it didn't take long before she pounced. "We need to talk about community standards," she said, her voice sharp. "There's one property that doesn't fit in with the rest. It looks like an eyesore. It doesn't belong here." Her eyes locked on me, and everyone knew exactly who she meant. My heart pounded. My cheeks burned. People looked around, some nodding, some staying silent. And for a moment, I thought I might break. But then I reminded myself, she didn't know. She had no idea what she was mocking. I didn't argue. I didn't fight back. I just sat there, calm with a small smile, because the truth was mine, and I was saving it for the right time. What she didn't realize was that this cabin wasn't just old. It wasn't just different. It was a treasure chest hidden in plain sight. And one day, when the truth came out, it would silence every laugh, every insult, and every cruel word. That day was coming faster than she could ever imagine. That summer meeting was only the beginning. After that night, the tension between me and her grew heavier with every passing day. She thought she had the upper hand. She thought the neighborhood stood with her. And maybe in some ways they did, because people fear conflict. They follow the loudest voice, even when that voice is cruel. But deep inside, I knew something they didn't. I knew the truth that could flip everything upside down. Still, I stayed patient. Sometimes the best revenge is silence. Let them laugh. Let them whisper. Because the longer they do, the louder the silence becomes when the truth is finally spoken. Weeks turned into months, and the attacks didn't stop. She sent me letters from the HOA, claiming my cabin didn't meet guidelines. She tried to fine me for nonsense reasons like unapproved exterior design and yard appearance. She even complained about the color of my mailbox. It was harassment dressed up as rules. There were days I almost gave in. I almost wrote a check, almost bowed my head, almost let her win. But every time I walked into my cabin, I felt the strength of generations before me. My grandfather's hammer still sat on the shelf. My grandmother's quilt still lay folded on the chair. My father's initials were carved into the wood of the porch. That cabin wasn't just mine. It was theirs, and I couldn't betray them by giving up. The breaking point came on a bright Saturday afternoon. She stood outside with 2 other board members, pointing at my cabin as if it were a crime scene. I overheard her say, if that thing was gone, our property values would finally rise. My hands clenched into fists, but I didn't walk out. I didn't shout. Instead, I smiled, because her words had sealed her fate. A few weeks later, I received a letter from a historical preservation group. They had been researching cabins in the area, and mine had come up as a rare original. They asked if they could survey the property. I agreed, curious but cautious. When they arrived, they walked slowly, touching the beams, admiring the stonework, studying the land. I could see the excitement in their eyes. One of them turned to me and said, "Do you realize what you have here? This isn't just a cabin. It's a landmark. The craftsmanship, the age, the untouched land around it, this is priceless." My heart skipped a beat. Priceless. That was the word. Weeks later, an appraisal confirmed it. Between the historic value, the location, and the untouched land rights, the cabin and property were valued at over $10 million. $10 million. The number stunned me. I stood there, staring at the report, tears filling my eyes. Not because of the money, but because it meant my grandfather's work had finally been recognized. All the years of laughter, all the whispers, all the jokes, suddenly none of it mattered, and I knew exactly what I had to do next. The following HOA meeting was packed. People gathered, sipping coffee, flipping through papers, waiting for the Queen herself to speak. She sat at the head of the table, smug as ever, ready to bring me down again. But this time, the game had changed. She started as usual, her voice dripping with arrogance. "We need to finalize the decision about the cabin," she said. "It simply doesn't meet our community standards. It's time we vote on stricter rules." That was my cue. I stood up, calm but steady, holding the appraisal folder in my hands. The room went quiet. All eyes turned to me. For a moment, I let the silence stretch. Then I spoke. I've listened to months of insults about my cabin. I've been mocked, laughed at, and treated like I don't belong. But before you vote, there's something you need to know. Her smirk widened as if she expected me to beg. But I didn't beg. I opened the folder and placed the appraisal on the table for everyone to see. This cabin you all call an eyesore has been officially valued at over $10 million. $10 million, not because of your so-called community standards, but because of the history and land it sits on. This cabin is older than the HOA. It's worth more than every single house here combined. The room went dead silent. Her face froze, the smirk melting into shock. People leaned forward, eyes wide, mouths open. Some gasped, others whispered. The weight of the truth hung in the air like a storm. I continued, my voice strong. You mocked me for holding on to something different. But what you didn't understand is that this cabin isn't just wood and stone. It's a treasure, a legacy, and it will stand long after these houses are forgotten. Her cheeks burned red. She tried to speak, but no words came out. She had nothing left to say. For the first time, the power shifted. The neighbors who once laughed now looked at me with respect. Some even apologized with their eyes, ashamed they ever joined in. In that moment, I felt taller than I ever had, not because of the money, but because the truth had set me free. From that day on, no one mocked my cabin again. The HOA backed down. The so-called queen lost her crown. And I learned one of the greatest lessons of my life. Never let anyone else decide the value of what you hold dear. Because sometimes the very thing people laugh at becomes the thing they wish they had. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Remember this. Your worth isn't defined by other people's opinions. It's defined by the truth you carry inside. Never let anyone laugh you out of your own treasure.